Good morning, and thank you for coming. My name is Ted Smith. I'm the founder of the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and the publisher of the Cannabis Digest newspaper. We have asked you to come here today to discuss our protest against the new federal regulations for medical marijuana, the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulations, which come into effect today, which do not allow patients to grow their own medicine. And so today we have brought a number of individuals to discuss why this is a problem. And first is John Conroy, the lawyer who was lead counsel in the injunction which successfully has suspended this change in regulations. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. The nature of the overall challenge is, of course, to establish or to reaffirm what was established by the Ontario Court of Appeal over 10 years ago, and that is that the courts determined as a result of the Constitution of Canada that the government had to create a viable constitutional exemption to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act for medically approved patients. So if you're medically approved, if there's no exemption, you're forced to choose between your liberty on the one hand, because of the penalties and so on in the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, and your health on the other by being unable to use your medicine that's approved by your doctor. So that's the overall framework. So remember that when the court found that this violated people's constitutional rights, the lack of exemption, they suspended the declaration of unconstitutionality and gave the government a year to try and come up with a solution to make things constitutional. The medical marijuana access regulations, which expire, or which were going to expire, and I suppose expire to some extent, March 31st, were the exemption that the government put forward. There were a number of court cases challenging the restrictions in those regulations. There were successful challenges. The government responded minimally. And now here we are some roughly 13 years later, and the government has decided to replace that exemption with this proposed new exemption under the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulations, which takes away the right of the person to produce for themselves and to control the quality and so on of their medicine, rights which were established in the Parker case here in 2001 and reaffirmed by the Ontario Court of Appeal in Murnaugh just last year. So we have in place an injunction that protects all those who had valid authorizations to possess as of the date of the decision, March 21st, currently, and had valid personal production or designated grower permits as of September 30th last year. So no new applications, no ability to change what's in the documents at this point, but grandfathered between now and the trial. There was some question whether the government was going to accept that it applied to all medically approved patients. The fact that they've now announced an appeal, or that they plan to appeal the injunction decision, would indicate that they do now accept that it applies to all. So the Federal Court of Appeal will be called upon at some point to determine whether or not Mr. Justice Manson was correct or not in granting the injunction. And to do that, they'll have to look at, one, whether it's a serious question to be tried, two, whether irreparable harm will be suffered by the patients if no injunction is granted between now and the trial, and where the balance of convenience lies between the government and the patients. And of course, we will submit that the injunction should be upheld and we should proceed to trial as expeditiously as possible. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Allison Murden, who is one of the patients affected by the regulations. And Allison, could you come forward, please?
You bet. No, actually, Norm, I desperately want to get up today. It's very important. Oh, I apologize. Can I have that, honey?
Allison is also the representative of the Coalition Against Repeal for Eastern Canada, which is the group of patients that came together in order to help put this lawsuit together.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, John, and thank you, everybody. Again, I've been doing so many interviews these last few weeks that I'm very tired, so I apologize for the chair. But I'm telling you that the reason I am on my feet today is because of things like medical cannabis. An open letter to Prime Minister Harper and to all Canadian members of Parliament. My name is Alison Murden. I have been asked to speak to you today on behalf of the approximately 40,000 medical cannabis patients across Canada who are licensed, who choose to grow their own medicine and or have someone we love grow and tend it for us. All of the patients here today and across this country should be applauded for standing up and fighting alongside of us to maintain our constitutional right to take care of ourselves and those we love. These rights have not been easily attainable for many. This has to change. I suffer from chronic progressive multiple sclerosis and the worst pain known to medicine in my face and head. I've had that for the last 26 years. It's associated with multiple sclerosis, and it's called tic douloureux. I am out of my electric wheelchair and walking today because of natural therapies such as cannabis. My great-grandfather, Peter McPherson, also suffered from this excruciating pain. Doctors treated him with hot liquid gold injections in his face. I fear someone else in my family will also one day be afflicted. We need your help. On Friday, March 21st, 2014, cannabis patients across Canada won an injunction to halt the newly proposed marijuana for medical purpose regulations in its tracks. Patients in Canada will continue to grow our own cannabis as long as our health and the Constitution dictate. Although, as a retired corrections officer, I deeply fear arrest. I don't think any of us understand. Why do we have to keep fighting for a God-given right? Our government should take care of Canadians who need medical marijuana, as long as our health and the Constitution dictate. Although, as a retired corrections officer, I deeply fear arrest. I don't think any of us understand. Why do we have to keep fighting for a God-given right? Our government should take care of Canadians who need medical marijuana, not make us go to the courts. Thank you. I'd like to introduce my friend, Debbie Stultz-Giffen, who also suffers from multiple sclerosis, who's come all the way from the East Coast here in Canada. Thank you. She is the director of Maritimers Unite for Medical Marijuana, or MUM, as it's also known. Thank you, Debbie Stultz-Giffen.
Thank you, Allison. I've also been a patient and enrolled in this program
to grow our own cannabis, as long as our health and the Constitution dictate. Although, as a retired corrections officer, I deeply fear arrest. I don't think any of us understand. Why do we have to keep fighting for a God-given right? Our government should take care of Canadians who need medical marijuana, not make us go to the courts. Thank you. I'd like to introduce my friend, Debbie Stultz-Giffen, who also suffers from multiple sclerosis, who's come all the way from the East Coast here in Canada. Thank you. She is the director of Maritimers Unite for Medical Marijuana, or MUM, as it's also known. Thank you, Debbie Stultz-Giffen.
Thank you, Allison. I've also been a patient and enrolled in this program since its inception, and in fact, prior to that, I held a Section 56 exemption. and have experienced many frustrations along the way at the hands of our federal government. Fortunately, you could almost hear, though, the sounds of thousands of cannabis seeds sprouting the weekend after Justin Manson ordered Health Canada to cease and desist with the full implementation of the MMPR, when he provided legal protection to those patients who'd been enrolled in the medical marijuana access regulations as of September 30th, 2013. Justice Manson wisely grandfathered in patients while they awaited a trial to examine the constitutionality of the MMPR. Interestingly, Health Canada is eager to preserve the vested economic interest of the major cannabis corporations, as opposed to offering some of the country's sickest citizens protection under our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Like Allison, cannabis is a main part of my medical regime. In fact, it's the only medicine that I can consume. I developed severe allergic reactions to the MS medications, and anything of a pharmaceutical nature that I tried was a disaster for my health. So in my mind, what Health Canada have done is forced patients to worry about our basic health maintenance versus our liberty, and it's simply unconscionable. Perhaps Health Canada should be renamed Wealth Canada instead. The heartless approach of the federal Conservative government would have seen patients destroying all excess medication in cannabis plants, mixing the debris with kitty litter, and depositing it curbside today. Furthermore, we had to notify Health Canada of how much we'd destroyed, or they would notify the local constabulary and they would kick our doors in, turn our homes upside down, humiliate us in our communities, perhaps rip our families apart if we had young children living in our homes, and basically turn our lives upside down. All in the interest of public safety, they say. What utter balderdash. They should be ashamed. The fact that the catalyst for this program was a court order is evident from day one. Health Canada's lengthy track record for patient abuse and incompetency is abysmal. In the MMPR, one of the things they were trying to do as well was deny patients the use of extracts, which could be anything as simple as a cup of cannabis tea, a brownie, a cannabis chocolate, a little bit of tincture, all in the name of preserving our health. Health Canada also really don't like us smoking it. They say that's not really in our best interest either, but yet they turn around and deny us the use of something simple, like I said, like a brownie or a cup of tea to ease our suffering. Or, as Allison just pointed out, or vaporizing as well. Patients are your friends, neighbors, and family members. We are not the criminals this government would have you believe. We are not a threat to public safety. We are not a danger to our neighborhoods. And the bottom line is, when they lie, this being the federal government, we suffer. And we, being the patients, the critically, chronically ill of this country. In fact, some of the illest people in this country being left to fight the federal government is absolutely abhorrent. They should be ashamed.
Are there more questions from the gallery here?
If the injunction remains,
Yes.
what are we looking at? Are we looking at months? Are we looking at perhaps a year before that we have some certainty? Or
The estimate was 9 to 12 months that Justice Manson indicated, and certainly I think it's in everybody's interest for us to proceed as expeditiously as possible. I haven't had a chance to speak with the government lawyers yet about a schedule, but that will be one of the next things we do. This I haven't received any notice of appeal yet, so I don't know what the grounds of appeal are, and that may delay things a little bit because we'll have to focus on that. But otherwise, our hope was to proceed, get the Section 7 charter right issue defined, deal with the dried marijuana limit issue and the 150-gram maximum issue, and then bear in mind that the onus shifts to the government to establish any limits under Section 1 of the charter. And that's where the evidence presumably to do with, or the lack of evidence in my submission about fire and mold and public safety will arise, and they will have to bear the burden of establishing that that warrants a limitation on the constitutional rights of the patients.
Could I get you to just to characterize the government's approach, their language? How would you characterize how they're tackling this issue, Mr. Conroy?
Well, the evidence, when examining some of their witnesses in relation to this issue, the position of the government seemed to be that the patients should wait and see how the market develops. The expert economists in terms of supply, as I understand it, are based on the literature which is on the application form under the MMPR about people normally using 1 to 3 grams a day. But that flies in the face of the actual information where Health Canada apparently approved something like 188,000 kilograms last year. And that certainly isn't the supply that's there today for the patients. They say, well, that's what was authorized to be used. But again, it was a patient, doctor, looking at their situation, determining what the appropriate grams or dosage per day was, and then Health Canada had to approve that. It wasn't that Health Canada could veto that. They certainly sometimes raised questions about the grams per day, but that was really a decision between the doctor and the patient.
The system that the federal government has put together, is it essentially the concern that you're actually going to run out of supply, or is the greater concern the increased cost to patients?
The concern for the patients is the cost. The patients indicate that they've been able to produce for 50 cents to $3 per gram. If you go back to Parker, Mr. Parker grew his own plants out of economic hardship. He couldn't afford the black market prices. We say the same situation prevails now. We have patients who cannot afford black market prices, gray market prices, or the licensed producer prices as estimated and shown on their web pages and other material. So lots of patients learned to grow for themselves, took courses, made a production site, whether in their basement or in an outbuilding or whatever, learned how to do it, put their plants outdoors, some of them from time to time, to save on the electricity costs. That won't be permitted under the marijuana for medical purposes regulations. In British Columbia, as a result of the Smith case, they were allowed to use extracts. That case is still on appeal. My opinion is that patients who are grandfathered, at least those in British Columbia, will be able to continue to do so pending any appeal or changes in the court proceedings. But economics is a big factor, was a big factor in Parker, and is a big factor in this case.
Bella, what is the cost now that when patients are making or producing their own product, as opposed to what the government cost is going to be per patient?
The estimated prices from the licensed producers is generally $5 to $12 and up. There are some that are coming up with a special program that can go down as low as $3 a gram. The patients tell me, and the evidence supports, that they can produce between 50 cents and $3 a gram. And Dr. Grutendorf, the economist for the government, agreed that these people were not really part of the licensed producers' target market because they won't be able to produce that cheaply. So
it would cost me It would cost me $60,000 to purchase cannabis through one of the licensed producers. $60,000 a year, and I live on under $30,000 a year. I currently own my own home. But if I were forced into the corner in that situation, it would be a question of how long I would be able to own my own home. It would certainly force me into further impoverished situations to comply with the government, or else put me in a position where I couldn't comply with the government at all and be forced to break the law to maintain the only source of medicine that is effective to treat my multiple sclerosis on a daily basis.
Wondering what your thoughts are on the notion that if the government is regulating this to the point where they require you to buy it from the government or some other source that's regulated by the government, that the product should be covered under OHIP in Ontario, for example, or provincial health drug plans?
Well, certainly if Health Canada are going to back patients into that fine of a corner, there should be some form of provincial healthcare coverage. But currently, cannabis doesn't have a DIN number, a drug identification number, which makes it easier for the provinces to turn away from providing coverage for it.
And right now, there is no attempt to get a DIN number for cannabis in this country, so it would be virtually impossible for it to be covered without that.
Although it's covered, Veterans Affairs has said that they will cover veterans, but I think they're the only ones that have come forward to say that they will do that. None of the provincial, and it's a provincial healthcare issue, as I understand it, whether or not things are covered under any of these plans. I think I should say that even in relation to other medicines, there's a major problem of lots of patients who are prescribed all kinds of drugs who can't afford it, even on top the costs, even on top of the healthcare plans. And so that would probably still be an issue in terms of cannabis as well. The medicines, those medicines, of course, are medicines that people can't manufacture or produce for themselves, whereas cannabis is and can be grown by patients, for patients, effectively, as 13 years have demonstrated.
Excuse me, I just wanted to add something. Again, I've been battling chronic progressive multiple sclerosis and tic douloureux for over 20 years, and I have found cannabis, to be one of the best medicines I have ever taken into my body. I use a lot of natural therapies. I've worked with doctors and scientists all around the world for the last 26 years to find out exactly how cannabis can help someone in my position, and found not only can it help things like multiple sclerosis, but again, there are studies being done at some place called the International Association for Cannabinoid Medicines, which I mentioned on Canada AM this morning, because a number of the doctors that I deal with, again, are on the board there. And what they do is they study this as medicine and they put it out so that everybody all around the world who's interested can read these studies and learn everything they need to know about cannabis as medicine. Thank you again.
It should be remembered that cannabis was on the U.S. Pharmacopoeia up until 1942, and it is back on the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia as of last year. There's a tendency amongst the medical professions, licensing bodies, and others to say that we know very little about marijuana simply because there haven't been any double-blind, placebo-based studies. One of the reasons, of course, that there haven't been that many of those types of studies is because the National Institute of Drug Abuse in the U.S. refuses to provide researchers with cannabis in order to do the studies in the first place. But believe me, cannabis has been studied probably more than any other drug, and if you take the time and effort to go and look up how many people have been processed through studies or studies that have been done, such as Donald Tashkin in relation to impact of 30 years in terms of longitudinal studies. So there's lots of information out there about the medical benefits of cannabis. It's just that the medical profession, even though this particular drug has no lethal dose, is saying that it has to have or be in the blue book or be something that's passed these tests before they feel that they won't cause harm. In my submission, their failure to look and investigate this is allowing people to suffer harm because of their unwillingness to look into this and really look into the situation for the benefit of the patients.
Any more questions then?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
If you guys want to do some on one-on-one,
Okay, and we are having a rally at noon on the front lawn. If
There'll
anyone
be
would be,
patients from all across Canada.
yeah, there's a
so
lot more people here that would like to protest
We
this.
are
So
not taking
thank you
this
very much for
sitting
coming.
down. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Hi, everybody out there in video land and on the internet. My name again is Alison Murden, and I am here representing the Ontario part of the steering committee of the Coalition Against Repeal. John Conroy has done an absolutely incredible job, for those of you who have not paid much attention, in winning our injunction on Friday, March 21st, to allow those of us like myself who continue to grow our own medicine to keep doing so. I'm very excited. So today we're here on Parliament Hill talking about not only that, but again, how as patients we suffer. I have a bad pain in my face and head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have for the last probably close to over 20 years. Literally called I can't even say it, sorry. Tic-Dollaroo, the worst pain known to medicine. And I don't wish this on anybody, but I'll tell you, cannabis has literally saved my life. So again, most days I'm up out of the wheelchair walking. It's just because I've been so busy that I have to use my wheelchair these days. But cannabis is keeping me up and keeping me on my feet. So I really appreciate that. And for those of you, again, who don't know, sorry to keep talking, but I did take 32 pills a day and 2,000 milligrams of morphine for 18 years. So cannabis is so much better. And again, we're fighting for that right here on Canadian land. We're fighting it on Parliament Hill here in Canada. The date today is April 1st, 2014. And we've just spoken in Parliament, John Conroy, our good friend Ted Smith, our other good friend Debbie Stoltz-Giffen from the Maritimes, and myself, Alison Murden. The four of us gave them a piece of our minds when we got up there and spoke to Parliament today. But we literally had them thinking, I think. So I hope today that that's going to be the end result, everybody. And again, I want to thank Ted for inviting me here, because I would have come either way, but it's so nice after all these years of doing things like this to have company like people like Ted Smith and, his partner, everybody who's come across Canada here on the Hill today to celebrate not only our big win of the injunction on Friday, but the fact that we're going to continue to fight to keep our right to grow our own medicine just for you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
My name is Ted Smith, and I and many others have gathered here today, Tuesday, April the 1st, on Parliament Hill in Ottawa to protest Health Canada's new marijuana for medical purposes regulations, which do not allow patients to grow their own medicine, as was allowed under the former medical marijuana access regulations. And so, as of today, if the government had their way, patients would have cut down their plants and they would be forced to buy their medicine off of licensed producers from henceforth. Fortunately, as you will hear, an injunction has been filed and successfully upheld the rights of patients to grow their cannabis until a full hearing can be heard. Today is a very important day for cannabis patients to step up and tell their story, because today licensed producers are pushing very hard to gain access to the market. These patients are seen as an economic opportunity for investors to make money, and by losing their own gardens, these companies will make more money, and that is the main reason why this government wants to take patient gardens away. It is abhorrent that wealth becomes more important than health. But this government considers patients to be more important or less important than profits, and it's very obvious in this new medical regime that that is the case. And it's also something that the police and fire chiefs will claim that it is a great risk to allow patients to grow their own medicine. Well, I put it to you that that is not true, that it is a great risk to cook your own food if that is the case, because people can get food poisoning or improperly grow their tomatoes. And so it shouldn't be something that we are forced to buy our food or our medicine from companies if we can provide it ourselves. And our government is stopping that. Our government wants us to solely purchase legal medicine from these large producers and not be able to be self-sustaining and look after our own family with this plant. And so it's been a very important day for patients to step up to the plate, not just in Ottawa, but across the country. People are protesting in various ways because this medicine saves lives. And it's critically important that people are able to grow their own, because many people could not afford to buy enough off these licensed producers to have the quality of life that they have now. And so I'd like to thank the Vancouver Pain Management Society for being the primary sponsor of today, along with the Weeds Dispensary kicked in a bit. But the Vancouver PMS Society has certainly been the main financer of this event today, flying us here with John Conroy and Debbie Stultz-Giffen and the like. And so very much appreciated for that support and everyone else's support in putting this event together today. Again, it's been a critically important day, a very sad day for us, but it is time for us to gather together and stand up against this government at every step of the way. And we will continue to do that in court and in the streets at any time necessary, because we need to ensure patients can grow their own medicine free of criminal prosecution. Thank you very much.
My name is Debbie Stultz-Giffen. I'm chair of Maritimers Unite for Medical Marijuana Society. We've been a registered not-for-profit in Nova Scotia for over 10 years now. We lobby with the all levels of government, actually, advocate for patients who require medical cannabis, and educate the public about the safety of cannabis as medicine. I'm here today to express my displeasure and abhorrence with the federal government, particularly Health Canada, with their abysmal treatment of the 40,000 patients who are currently enrolled in the program, with their desire to sacrifice our health in the interest of wealth. They would prefer that we be forced to purchase our medicine from a corporate cannabis producer at a great price to patients, and they still have the audacity to claim that our medicine is accessible for us, when we can grow it at home for pennies a gram to perhaps as much as $2 a gram, and they would like us to purchase it for prices of over $8 a gram to upwards of even $15 a gram. In my personal situation, it would cost me $60,000 to maintain a medication supply for a year. That's simply unconscionable when I live on under $30,000 a year. And Health Canada are quite keenly aware that 61% of us fall quite squarely in that category, and they should be ashamed, completely and utter ashamed, for the abhorrent treatment of some of the illest citizens in this country.
To all those individuals who've come here today, we have people here from coast to coast. We have Debbie Stultz-Giffen from Halifax. I and my girlfriend have come from Victoria, British Columbia, on the other side of the country, and we brought John Conroy, the lawyer for the MMPR Coalition Against Repeal, that successfully filed an injunction that's really made a reprieve for patients. Today is a very, very sad day. We are not here for a good reason. We are here for a horrible reason. We are here because this government would have patients cut down their plants, even if it means their lives may be shortened and that they will suffer more. Today, if this federal government had its way, patients would have been cutting down their plants last night and would be forced to buy their medicine off of licensed producers. Fortunately, John Conroy and the injunction have temporarily stopped that from happening. And today we are here to tell this government that we will fight them back every step of the way. And so thank you very much for coming and helping to support that battle. And I'm not going to speak a lot today. I guess I have newspapers for the Cannabis Digest. I'll let you know again later. But other than that, I'm going to let our lawyer, John Conroy, up here to speak. And then some patients to talk about why they're here as well. And we won't be here for very long because it's not that nice out, but we will be here for a while. So thank you again very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you very much, in particular, to John Conroy for all of his decades and decades of very hard work for drug reform in this country. And congratulations in this case here, John. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you very much. I guess the main thing I need to outline for you all to remember is that Terry Parker and others started this back in 2000, and it's Terry Parker's case that basically established that when they don't have a provision, a viable exemption for you under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, for those of you who are medically approved, then you are forced to choose between your liberty and your health. You're forced to choose whether to continue to do this without having a permit or to go without your medicine. And that's the essential point. That's the point that was picked up by the Ontario Court of Appeal and has consistently been maintained by the courts, and including a right to produce your own medicine. And that right to produce continued even in the presence of a government supply. So now, fortunately for us, the federal court determined that in our case, where we're trying to confirm the ambit and scope of your right as patients, medically approved patients, the federal court agreed that A, there was a serious question to be tried, B, that if there was no injunction between now and the trial, that the patients would suffer irreparable harm, and that the balance of convenience lies with the patients. So there was some question being raised by the government about whether it applied to all of you and not just the applicants. It was a clear understanding by me and counsel that I was dealing with from the government that it did. When you affect the constitutional rights of one, you affect the constitutional rights of all. But anyway, so there's a bit of a silver lining in the government's decision to appeal. I haven't seen any notice of appeal yet, but there was an announcement, so I don't know what the grounds are. But that means that they must be respecting the injunction and that they're going to go to a court of law, the Federal Court of Appeal, to determine its validity. So that's a good thing, rather than you having to worry today or next week or whatever that they might suddenly be showing up on your door. Of course, if they do show up on your door, remember Terry Parker. Remember that they are forcing you to choose between your liberty and your health. Make sure you have a copy of your medical documents in order to hand to them. Make sure you have a copy of the reasons for judgment of Mr. Justice Manson that you can hand to them. Persuade them not to take away your equipment because there's a court case that's ongoing, and ultimately we hope to win at the federal court trial level. There may be subsequent appeals. It may go on for a while, but we hope to establish your right to continue to produce your medicine for yourself, or to get it from a licensed producer if you can afford it. It's the choice of the patient in relation to their medicine that we wish to establish. Thank you very much. The timeline, the court indicated 9 to 12 months, and we're of the view, we agree that we should move as expeditiously as possible. It may be that we have to break it up into segments, the Section 7 issue, the dried marijuana limit, the 150 gram max, and then the government's onus to try and justify any limits. When I see the appeal documents, of course, that's going to distract us a little bit. We're going to have to go and put a record together for that and arguments together for that instead of concentrating on getting the trial moving. But hopefully we can move both as fast as possible so that there's some certainty for everybody on this issue.
Thank you again, John, for coming all the way out here with us to tell Ottawa what is happening with this injunction.
you do something about this weather? It's April 1st, isn't it?
Again, I think I'm preaching to the converted here. You all obviously care deeply about this, and I really appreciate you all coming. It's been a very important day because, again, today these licensed producers are having their message heard. They're in the media today talking about how safe they are, about how unsafe you are, and how important it is for them to control this industry. Today is a day for patients to stand up against that wave and say, no, we can grow our own medicine. We care about ourselves enough to do it properly. If we can't, then we'll buy it off you. That's fine, but you shouldn't be forced to buy it off these large corporations. And so, again, thank you so much to John Conroy for keeping that battle going. Thank you so much to Allison and Deb and everybody else that's come here. We've got people from Calgary, people from the West Coast, and all over Ontario. I really, really appreciate you making the extra effort to come here. Thanks everyone for being here. Have an awesome day, and thank you again for coming out. Take care.
Hi, my name is Terry Parker. I'm down here, up here, I should say, at the House of Commons in Ottawa, and here in protest of the government's new bill giving corporations sole grower ghoship over the country. People may recall I'm the one who spent 20 years for the courts to have marijuana struck down unconstitutional on December 10th, 1997, which was upheld by the Ontario Court of Appeal on July 31st, 2000. But when the government made a decision, they also suspended it for 1 year for the government to make up some sort of remedy for those requiring marijuana for medical necessity. As such, in 2001, they implemented the Medical Marijuana Access Regulations, which require persons to obtain a doctor's permit or a prescription in order to obtain marijuana medical necessity. I have to object to this. One, being an unwitting subject of highly classified human research in my teenage years, should not have to depend on a doctor or criminal when it comes to access to marijuana for medical necessity. For years, I've struggled with epilepsy. I've lost my jobs. I've been not allowed to go to school, college, because of my seizure disorder. And I find it disgraceful that we got a government that is sanctifying all kinds of unauthorized, non-therapeutic experimentation with unwitting subjects, at the same time prohibiting a substance which is very effective in treating a host of conditions such as epilepsy, MS, CP, cancer, for another one. The present regulations affect me now where I cannot get a doctor to fill the forms, therefore being prone to criminal arrest. I'd hope that someday that in this country we can vote in the Marijuana Party of Canada, and by doing so, then we'll have true legalization and a cure for those who are suffering anything in this country. And that's my 2 cents for today. Have a good day.
My name is Al Graham, and I've just driven 3 hours from north of Belleville, Ontario, to come here to Ottawa today in order to protest the changes in the medical marijuana laws here in Canada. We don't believe that it's right that they are taking away our rights to grow our own medication and strains that we have found that work for us, and force us to buy marijuana, our medical marijuana, from commercial growers that are taking over our license system. It's a lot of patients will suffer due to cost alone. Presently, patients can grow their cannabis, for pennies, and they're going to sell it to us for $7 to $10, even $12 a gram. And patients, just don't get that kind of money. I spoke with a lady last night her daughter uses cannabis for epilepsy, and they grow a specific strain called Haley's Comet. And her daughter requires approximately 40 grams of this stuff, 35 to 40 grams a day, and then have to buy that at $10. There's $300 a day. Then there's no way that patients can afford something like that. And you take that figure, you times it by 30 days, you're looking at approximately $9,000. So what kind of patient makes that kind of money? Nobody does. So we're here today to let people know that patients are going to suffer with this new program, and it's not right. It's not fair to the patients. They stigmatize us. They say that we're a threat to society. They tell us that gangs are going to break into our houses and can harm neighbors, harm our communities. But yet, when you look around, of the 40,000 people, there's only a very small number of them that are active in the community. Most of the people wanting to be quiet, and they don't say anything. And those people, as well as ourselves, are being victimized by our own government, and that is totally wrong. Patients shouldn't be victimized by the people who, in a sense, look after us in a situation when our health deteriorates. So it's not fair to anybody, and it's not fair to the taxpayers as well. Prohibition is a very costly experiment that's been going on for years that should end, and this shows what patients are going through with all these court dates and the appeals and everything that they're going through, is that the courts agree with us, and the government is fighting against them as well as us, and it's just not right. Patients are being painted as criminals, bad for society, threats, but yet, there's a mother here today with her younger daughter. How is that younger daughter a threat to society? It doesn't make any sense to me or anybody else.
This is the accumulation of 14 years of a cannabis program, and here we are today.
Correct. Yeah. This program is for 14 years, as you mentioned. They also say there's no studies or anything. Why didn't they have a couple of volunteers or ask for volunteers in the MMPR program and study us?
This thing's been studied more than any other thing around.
It's one of the most studied plants in the world, and yet, but they say there's no reports. And you can see it. You can see the evidence, and you can see the proof that it's helping people.
Come out with what they want them to say. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. It's unfortunate, and there's so many researchers, even researchers that the government has hired, over time to try to show the negative of cannabis, but yet, they end up finding a benefit of cannabis. So, they just need to actually do the proper reports and do the proper studies so patients don't suffer.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Trish Rooney.
Can you T-R-I-S-H?
Yes, T-R-I-S-H.
Rooney.
R-O-O-N-E-Y.
And where are you from?
I'm from Ottawa, Ontario.
And I see you smoking marijuana here today.
Yes, I am smoking marijuana.
Why do you smoke? Is it medicinal reasons?
It is medicinal. I have multiple sclerosis.
And tell me how it helps.
It helps with my pains, my tremors, my spasticity. It will help keep my appetite going because I will not eat for hours on end, so it'll trigger it.
And where have you been getting your supply up till now?
I have a grower, and he grows for me.
And so why have you come down here today?
I've come down here today because I really think that the government of Canada should not dictate this to big business, make us go and make money off of people that are on pensions. I read on the website that they're going to make over $1 billion or something like that. Give me a break off of my money when I can make it grow for cheaper.
Tell me what
and
you
I
pay
know
now.
what's in it.
Oh, tell me what you pay now versus what you might have to pay.
For my husband and I, who are both legal, we pay $800 a month. And then if we're forced to go to Tweed Inc. or whatever the hell it's called, it's at least 2 to 3 times the price. So if we're paying $800 now, we're looking at $1,600 to $2,400, and that will absolutely make us broke. We could not do that.
How do you pay for it now?
I pay cash for it. Right, I pay cash to my dealer every month.
And are you on disability, or are you working? Or
no, I'm on disability, and so is my husband. We're both on CPP disability.
And what does your husband take it for?
Pardon me?
Why is your husband?
He has a lower tumor in his spine, so he takes it for pain mainly, and for his appetite to be stimulated because he's quite underweight. So our doctor prescribes it without a problem.
And how has it helped you?
For which? For me or for him?
For you. And how long have you been taking it?
I've been legal since 2000, off and on. But they're going to force me to be illegal again, no problem. I don't have a problem. I know where I'm going to get it. I'm not getting it off the street where some people have to go and where it's filled with pesticides or whatever else. It's going to screw you up even more. I don't even know what they're putting on it when they're growing it for us, and even if they're going to have the full amount supply to accommodate everyone's needs.
So you know your grower. Tell me, how long have you been dealing with?
I've been dealing with my grower since 2000. So I've known him for 14 years.
And you have confidence.
I have full confidence in him. And I know what he's been putting on my plants, which is nothing. Thank you very much. I don't need that other crap on it.
How many joints or grams do you need a day to control your symptoms?
I smoke 5 grams a day, 3 to 5 grams a day. And if they say you increase, well, that's not true because I've went from 8 grams to 5 grams.
Why?
Why? Because I didn't need the same amount. When I first had the 8 grams, I was really, really sick. And now I'm not as sick as I was, so I don't need the same amount.
You came here today smoking your pot here on Parliament Hill. Why? Was it just coincidental?
Because I'm legally allowed to, so why not? I could smoke anywhere I damn well please, thank you very much. So yes, it was worth it.
So do you think, are you worried that you may be on the wrong side of the law if you continue buying from your grower and not go through these licensed commercial operations?
I'm not worried if I'll be on the wrong side of the law. You want to come and arrest me, come and arrest me. I don't feel that I should be forced to be broke and not be able to pay my other bills just to have my medical marijuana. That's just criminally not right.
And you and your husband both have the license
Yes.
to do that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Asia White, and I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I flew here from Vancouver yesterday morning, and then we drove from Toronto here to Ottawa with a group of 2 other people. I'm here today because the new MMPR affects me dramatically. As of today, the government has decided that I only get 50% of my medication, and that I'm no longer allowed to have extracts. And unfortunately for me, this really affects my job and my everyday living, and I'm here to hopefully make a change so that I can get my medicine back. I've never been a grower, and unfortunately, the new LP system is just too expensive. I can't afford pot at those prices, and I don't qualify to have any of it covered or anything like that. So it's been quite the journey to get here, and hopefully with all these people here, we can make change and have things go back to the way it was.
I'm here today because medical patients across this nation, including myself, our rights are being taken away from us that were granted to us to cultivate our own medicine. Starting today, April 1st, the LCPs, the large crop producers here in Canada, there's currently 12, can now sell marijuana to Canadians who have been granted a license with their doctor, where the price can go from anywhere from $8 to $10, and some places they do have certain, we'll call them cut rates, where they can you meet certain income rates where you make $4. But where this is the most important thing is that the road to success with these LPs is not through the gardens of Canada's sickest people or of anyone who needs these types of medicines. You should have the ability to grow them yourselves, and if you can't grow them or don't want to grow them, you should have the LPs to be there for you. And since the court injunction on Friday, some licensed producers have made public statements saying, we are absolutely thrilled that you guys are going to be able to continue to grow your medicine, and we will be here for you when you need us. While on the other hand, you will have some LPs that may not be as thrilled about it because it's a part of their new business. Every single person is part of the share. Every single, say, 3 people may be an employee type of, I don't know how it's going to be set up. I'm just speculating on that. But I'm here because I'm in support of everyone who cultivates their cannabis, and the fact that it's a medicine and it has the potential to cure cancer, and more knowledge as it's sharing. So we look forward to seeing the future. I look forward to seeing Canadians continue to cultivate cannabis in Canada, and where that goes for 2014.
My name is Susie Strand, and I suffer from secondary progressive multiple sclerosis and trigeminal neuralgia. Multiple sclerosis and TN have been 2 of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, and I have tried every pharmaceutical, every treatment that has ever been offered to me, and I was miserable, and I was in a wheelchair. And then I discovered cannabis, and I'm out of the wheelchair. I can walk on my own steam. I have the energy to take care and play with my children. Growing my own cannabis and my own medicine has been one of the most therapeutic things that I've ever been able to do for myself. The new regulations have really taken medication out of my grasp completely. I cannot afford being on disability. The cost of my prescription, which is almost 3 times the amount of money that I make on disability. There's just no way that this can be just. It's got to change. It can't stay this way.